Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today, as you can tell, my voice is complete trash, and because of that, I'm going to have to postpone the Chosen of Valhalla live stream. I've already let them know, but if you were looking forward to that stream later today, that is no longer happening because I have to have some kind of voice left starting for school tomorrow. But before going into the box office breakdown for this weekend, because we do have some numbers for the Suicide Squad, make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live onto the channel. All right, so we do have some numbers for the Suicide Squad, and it is not looking good at all. The estimates that were coming in for the weekend were very much trying to say there was a good chance that the film could make anywhere of close to $30 million or more in the domestic marketplace. It has now officially come in, or at least the official estimate has come in at only being $26.5 million. And any person that covers the box office is looking at this number and saying this is incredibly underperforming. And whether you like the film or not, this is incredibly underperforming. And I know that there might be some people out there that might try to make excuses, blaming pandemic, the rated R rating, HBO Max, etc. And all those are definitely factors. But what we have seen is that the biggest reason why this film is said to be another box office flop, and it's something that I can very easily say at this point that it's going to be another box office flop, is because of the massive budget that this film had, where when you look at the movie, you realize they really didn't need to spend that much money on this film. And they probably could have saved a crap ton of money had they had it be a shorter film, and also had they not wasted money on random crap CGI like they did for the character of Weasel, amongst other things. And all of these things I think are going to come back at the end of the run and at the end of everything, because they're going to have to look at this and say, okay, we are losing probably north of $150 million on this project. Every single DC film that's been put out this year has basically been a massive financial loss. Warner Brothers has not been doing well at all financially at the box office. Neither has Disney or any of the other studios really, but anything that really is a massive budget isn't really making money at this point. Another great example of that is Disney, of course, with their film Jungle Cruise, which is at 55% drop from last week, $15.6 million domestically, putting the domestic total around $65.3 million. The issue with that movie specifically is that it means that Jungle Cruise is going to be at least $150 million loss for Disney. And if you really add up all of the films that have been massive flops for Disney at this point, it kind of makes you scratch your head and wonder where in the world are they going to be able to make up this money? I know that they are a massive multi-billion-dollar corporation and that they're got their hands in almost everything, but it's just very hard for me to see how they can possibly make any money at this point in time. Looking at the full weekend, as you'll see, Suicide Squad came in at number 1, Jungle Cruise at 2, the movie Old came in at number 3, Black Widow is still up there making some money domestically, but not really doing a whole lot else worldwide, and that came in at number 4, and Stillwater came in at number 5, making $2.8 million as such. Films like Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe is continuing to be a massive flop, losing countless numbers of dollars on that movie. And it's, again, just not looking good for the box office all around. And I think that anyone who is trying to, spin anything to say that the box office is back or that, movies are back, the movie theaters are back, is just not being honest. Because if you actually go to the theaters and if you actually look at the raw numbers, you're realizing that the box office is nowhere close to being back. And if you listen to what some people have been saying, the chances of these major studios really pushing more and more towards their streaming services and less towards theaters, really, I think, kind of shows that there is a good chance that theaters in general could very much be on their last leg and are on their last leg and have been for a long time now. And anything that they got over the pandemic as far as financial help is concerned is not going to matter and not going to do anything for them if they continue to not make money. Because you look at these numbers, and obviously it's one of those things where I'm happy to see major corporations like Disney, Warner Brothers lose money in this way when they put out crap films especially. But the other thing that really we don't talk about as much or focus on as much is that this is also a very bad sign for theater owners, not just the major chains, but even the local mom and pop type theater chains too, whether it's the regional theater chains or just the small local theater too, because if no one's going to the theater and if Hollywood is not producing films that people actually want to go to the theater to watch, then it's going to leave them very much high and dry, and they're only going to be able to get financial assistance for so long because, the last year and a half it's been, hey, well, you forced us to shut down, and so what we're supposed to do. But at this point, if no one's going to see the movies anymore, it's going to be a lot harder for them to really be able to convince anybody to be able to give them money to stay open. And that is the other factor of this, So again, it's one of those things where I'm happy that studios are failing, but the problem is that if studios fail, it means that by proxy, the theaters fail as well. And I really just hope that studios can wake the hell up after these massive financial losses that they're receiving and actually start to put out good films for much lower budgets that people might actually want to go see. But based on the what we're seeing right now, it just doesn't seem very likely at this point. The Suicide Squad, this is showing up as $33.2 million. However, according to some of the people that have been covering this, the film is actually a much bigger loss than that. Even Scotty Boy Mendelson, as you all know, who I'm not a fan of, I think has a decent take here when he says 10 reasons why the Suicide Squad is a box office disaster. And that is really the only way that you can paint this. The same would be true also of Jungle Cruise. Jungle Cruise is also a financial disaster because even if you include the so-called Disney Plus numbers, it still does not make up for the massive losses that that film is going to see either. But Suicide Squad is very much in the same boat. It goes on to say here, as feared, James Gunn's critically acclaimed The Suicide Squad opened this weekend with $26.5 million domestic and $72.2 million worldwide debut. So as I said, some of the websites like Box Office Mojo and the numbers have not updated yet, but a lot of times these people who cover the box office normally have access to these numbers. And, obviously there are reports that are put out by studios as well, and they usually get a little bit better access to those types of things. And so 72.2 million is likely what the estimate for the weekend is going to be. It says here, that's below even the fingers crossed $30 million benchmark and below both Space Jam and Space Jam: A New Legacy and Jungle Cruise, which made $31 million domestically and $35 million domestically, respectively. Yes, we're still in a pandemic with infection rates rising amongst mostly the unvaccinated, and film is concurrently available on HBO Max, but as regular readers know, I never considered The Suicide Squad a remotely safe bet, even well before COVID changed the equation. Frankly, most of the big films this summer were at best commercial question marks. The Suicide Squad stings because A, it had rave reviews, B, a lot of folks thought it would be a repeat of what happened in 2016, when Suicide Squad crushed it on this very weekend with $133 million domestically in 2016, snapping the summer season out of a June-July slump. So went wrong. And so it's going to go into all the different reasons. So for him, it's, COVID, HBO Max, it's a sequel, reboot, a spinoff or something. That was one of the issues that I brought up as well, is that it tried to be more than just what it was. It tried to play off, it was kind of this in between. It was a sequel, but then also a reboot, and you can't have both. It has to be one or the other. And when that type of writing really falls into it, where even the writers are confused as to what the film is going to be, so even James Gunn is trying to play it both ways, it just really doesn't work all that well with it. It says here, audiences didn't like or didn't care about Suicide Squad. So again, obviously there are a lot of good positive reviews coming out for this film, not just from critics, but also from audiences as well. But again, now that we have the box office numbers to see that this film is underperforming compared to other films that have come out around the same time period, it does seem to indicate that there is a reason to suggest that not as many people are loving this film as many people in the DCEU fandom might believe. Because this is something that's happened in previous films too, where many people, for instance, when Justice League came out, I remember when that original Justice League came out, you didn't hear about people talking about the Snyder Cut for the most part. You heard a lot of people just defending it because it was DC. And I remember covering that movie and covering the fact that that film was not going to make money. And people were just going after me because I was trying to point out that fact, that it was just not going to be financially successful. And when you look at the film and how much that film cost versus how much that film made, it was not a huge financial success no matter how you try and spin it. And so I think that is something that, really is indicative of the fandoms and is indicative of these spaces that we isolate ourselves into. And it really, I think, makes it very difficult for us to be able to truly understand, what is actually going on in the world around us. It says here 5 years is too long between installments. I don't know about that necessarily. 6, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn is not that popular in the real world. Wait a minute, is this Scotty Boy Mendelson actually admitting something? Yeah. We already knew this. This is not a revelation. This movie did not make money at the box office, and the vast majority of people who saw this film walked away not really liking it. Even though people in your corner of the world may have liked it because of the feminism messages and because of the woke identity of the director, who literally, when she was pitching this, put forward just this amalgamation of just a bunch of anti-Trump random nonsense. It's one of those things where it's this is something that anyone with a brain has known for a very long time. He goes on to say $185 million, an absurd amount of money to spend on an R-rated film. This, again, I think is something that has some truth to it. The issue, though, is that it's not just because it's an R-rated movie. It's the fact that they're spending this much money and the fact that they are releasing it in such a way. and it's almost impossible then, because of all the other factors going on, for the film to make any money back. And maybe if the film had actually been a really well done, well-made film that did not cause any division amongst people's going to see it, it could have actually gotten really positive word of mouth. But that is not what's really happening with this movie, and I think the box office is a very good indication of that. It says Idris Elba is not a bankable movie star. No one is. Scotty Bo Mendelsohn, no one is. The concept of a movie star being bankable is no longer there. You know, it's interesting that he's making these arguments for this movie, and yet I don't remember him doing a similar thing when it comes to Jungle Cruise. Jungle Cruise, I think anyone with a brain would say, yeah, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is a major star, and he is someone that most people genuinely really like. And yet, look at his movie. His movie is going to be a massive financial flop, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that it cost $200 million and everything else that's attached to it. But that by itself is not enough to make a really good argument nonetheless. It says, stop making sequels to Will Smith movies without Will Smith. Again, kind of whatever. The Suicide Squad had nothing to offer other than the brand. And I think actually that last point is incredibly accurate, where this movie is something that I think people will enjoy if they are bought into the DC universe. If they are all in on DC, they're going to go into this movie saying, okay, it's got DC stuff and that's all I care about. You know, these are people who typically don't care about whether the film is actually objectively good or not. They just want to go in and be able to turn the brain off and just be able to consume. And that's not me trying to attack anybody, but it is just something that I think that is actually a fair point to make. So, as you all know, Scotty Bo Mendelsohn, I think, sometimes makes decent points, but usually he's just completely full of it. But anyway, so as I said, though, the $72.2 million worldwide is what the Suicide Squad has made up to this point. Jungle Cruise only up to $92.9 million, so it's not even cracked the $100 million mark at this point. It's not likely going to make, a crazy amount of money. I mean, again, this is going to be a massive flop. I'm going to talk about that when I bring up the chart. But again, really bad news for Disney in this case. While the film Old has already reached that level of profitability, even though, as I've made clear, and I did an early review for some people who are supporters of mine, who are at the Keeper the Bifrost level and above, and you all know that I am not a big fan of this film. I think that the writing of this film is just really convoluted and just does not really work. But it is still something where the film has made money, and no matter what you have as far as an opinion of the film is concerned, these are the numbers, and these are, we have to look at them as such in this way. So looking at the actual box office tracking, let me go ahead and update this real quick as I updated my numbers. So as you can see from the opening weekend, the Suicide Squad made $72.2 million. But remember, it cost $185 million to actually make the movie, meaning that the film cost in total around $277.5 million when you account for typical marketing cost. Meaning right now that film is sitting at negative $234 million. Now, obviously, we have to wait until next weekend before I can make any actual predictions as far as the range and the actual projected number is concerned, what typically is found in a lot of movies. But I think we can safely say at this point that only making $72.2 million worldwide is not a very strong start, is not a very good start to this film, and is likely going to lead to this film being at least $150 million loss for Warner Brothers, which is not going to be nearly as bad of a loss as Jungle Cruise. So Jungle Cruise, we can now officially say it's going to lose at least $188 million worldwide at the box office, because it's only made around $92.9 million at this point, putting it at around negative $244 million. That is not looking very good for that film at all. And again, that's what happens when you have a massive, big budget film coming out that people don't really want to go see, and is just kind of missing the mark overall. And I really hope that at some point, because I talk about this every single week, we have so many financial flops this year. I'm hoping that at some point the studios wake up and realize, okay, maybe we need to start to rethink things. Maybe we need to start to actually put out good original stories and not spend nearly as much money on these massive, giant, digital, artificially made type movies that only a handful of people are actually going to enjoy and actually go out of their way to go see. Because, again, whether you like Jungle Cruise or the Suicide Squad is neither here nor there, seeing because we have the numbers to show that people just aren't going to see this movie. And obviously in the case of a film like The Suicide Squad or anything on HBO Max, one could argue, well, this is not accounting for anyone watching the film on HBO Max. But remember that that's a very difficult thing for us to really be able to track in any realistic way, because it's impossible for us to know whether someone is signing up for the service just to watch a given film, if they're going to watch other stuff too, or if they're already subscribed and are just planning to watch this in addition to the other films that they've already watched by being an HBO Max subscriber. So it's very difficult for us to really take that into account at all. And it's really, I think, impossible for anyone to try and make a valid argument as to how that could actually make up for the financial loss that we're seeing in this category, in this case. So there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of reasons why you're seeing these massive budget films flop, but a big part of it is going to be, and again, there's all these parts have to be taken into account together, but one of them has to be, and it has to be seen as, they're making movies that people don't want to go see. They're making films that people are not willing to go out of their house to go see multiple times. We're not seeing those levels of films being made anymore. And that's why I've been very much all about trying to say we need to start supporting films that are really good, not just not woke, but are really good, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to show that these are the kinds of movies that we want to be made. The Suicide Squad, though it might make a lot of people happy, and though there might be some subjective elements in there that people find enjoying, it is still a movie that is not going to be able to bring out enough people for it to be financially successful. And so, you can put all the positive spin on it you want. You can obviously support the film as much as you want, because that is your right to do. But at the end of the day, the studio is going to have to look at this number and say, okay, people didn't want to go see this film. So it is something that I think we do need to be careful with as far as the way in which we approach our movies, because we want good films. We don't just want not woke films. We want really good films as well. That being said, there are some indie films that are looking to be financial losses as well. The Green Knight right now has made around $10 million or so worldwide, $12 million worldwide. So that film is likely going to be losing between $12 and $7 million. Since it is a lower budget film, you could potentially see that film make its money back on Blu-ray and 4K, etc. Also, there was that commentary I made last week where it was mentioned that a lot of their foreign overseas costs were already covered and were already made back because of the different deals they had. So again, take that with a grain of salt, but it is still something that could eventually lead this film to not being a complete loss. But again, if I was a studio and I was looking at negative $7 million for my loss versus negative $188 million for my loss, I would say, okay, you know what? I could probably write this off and make this up somewhere else. It's a lot easier to make up a smaller number like that than the massive number that we're seeing. And again, the CGI they were able to make in The Green Knight, I think, was very compelling for the price. And then the other independent film, Stillwater with Matt Damon, is looking to lose anywhere between negative 17 and 17 or $21 million in its financial loss, as it's only made around $10 million worldwide, because it's not really making any money overseas. It's mostly an American-based film, domestic-based film, and so it's looking at being yet another financial loss, but lower budget film. And so therefore it could end up making it back in some other way in the long run. But anyway, those are the numbers that I wanted to focus on. I'm going to try and end this before my voice just completely leaves. But what are your thoughts about this? Again, as I said before, I think that there are a lot of reasons why these films are failing. But I think that one of them that oftentimes gets not nearly as much focus is the fact that these are movies that people just in general don't want to go see. And again, that's not just me trying to put anyone down. I'm not trying to slam you for being a fan of a film like The Suicide Squad. I'm just trying to, especially in these videos, make it very clear. So you can see the number has updated. So I'm just trying to make it very clear that these numbers are what they are. And there's no way to spin these numbers one way or the other. Again, films that I like have been financial losses this year or have not made that much money. Films that I've hated have also fallen into the same category as well. So I think it is something that we just need to start to realize. And hopefully, my hope is that Hollywood wakes up. Obviously, I think that it's a hope that's ever fleeting and is ever just slowly fading away, because at this point, I think any chance of Hollywood actually changing is very, very small. But it would be really nice for us to be able to move to a point where we move past these massive big budget films that are just so empty and are just so void of any originality and so void of any actual objective quality to them, and instead are just put out there for just having a bunch of random sequences and random events that fans of a source material might enjoy, but everyone else around them are going to be like, okay, this doesn't make any sense because it's just not an objectively well-made, well-crafted film that everyone can enjoy. That's something that we used to see a lot in comic book movies, where there were stuff in there for everyone. And now we're starting to see things like this, or even just things like Jungle Cruise, where those are films that are just being made, and it's like they're being made by committee almost. And I would say that this film, Suicide Squad, is probably less so made by committee with James Gunn's involvement, but in the end, I think the end result is still the same, where you just are left with these artificial hollow husks of shells of what could be really well made and really well put together films. But in the end, we're just left with these massive, gigantic flops. Because again, I can say at this point, Jungle Cruise for sure is going to be a flop, but even a week in, The Suicide Squad, because I think, even though I think Scotty Bo Mendelsohn is a bit of a shill and a hack, he does make a couple of good points at the very least there. But anyway, what are your thoughts about this? Let me know in the comments section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up the fire button. It really does mean a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my August Locals, Patreon, and Subscribe Star members. Starting off with my Locals crew: Cat's App, The Real It, D Sharp, Biffer the Hobbit, Robert Barnes, and Goblin Squatch. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on Locals. And now on to my Patreon members: Andrew Hoyle, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dion, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Lance, Laura, the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Allen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. And lastly, to my Subscribe Star peeps: Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Subscribe Star, and to everyone for supporting me on these platforms. Also, a shout out to all of my YouTube members. You get shouted out at the end of every single live stream. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video, please check out my Locals Patreon Subscribe Star. And you can go ahead and find those links in the top link of this description. You can find it's called the Willow link, and it'll have a list to literally all of the social media platforms and all the different ways that you can support the channel. If you join at the $1 level, you can actually get your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream. $5 level gives you that, plus you get access to exclusive giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I've got tons of 4K steelbooks to give away this month, including for Top Gun. I also have A Quiet Place Part 2. I have Snatch on 4K, the John Wick trilogy on 4K, and also I have a Sicario 4K disc as well, and a bunch of others that are going to be coming in this month too. So if you want to have access to any of those types of exclusive giveaways, join at the Army of Asgard level. At the $10 level, the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, including instant reactions when I go to see movies. I do quick little filmings of myself and talk about the films that I have seen and my instant reactions to that. You also get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger once or twice a month, and you get to also ask us any question that you want. We put a Q&A post up, and you get to ask us whatever it is that you want to ask. So again, if that sounds cool to you, Keeper of the Bifrost level. And lastly, there is the Chosen of Valhalla level, where you get all that stuff, plus in your first month as a Chosen of Valhalla member, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, ship it anywhere in the world, and also you get to once a month be featured on the OMB Reviews channel, and you get to talk with me. We usually chill out for 3 to 4 hours, and I ask everyone what they've been watching, what they want to talk about, what they want to promote, and it's always a really good time. And so if that sounds interesting to you, please consider joining. That is going to be on Subscribe Star and on Patreon only, as Locals is just the Keeper of the Bifrost level. But anyway, thank you all very much for your time, for your support, and for listening to this shout-out video. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.